For this video, I'm going to be going through each of the accessory items that are currently an artifact, and I'm going to talk about when you would consider purchasing them, whether or not I've seen them played in the constructed environment in the closed beta, and when you would consider maybe playing them in draft. So, right out of the gate, Traveler's Cloak, 3 gold, plus 4 health to your equipped hero. This is a basic item, so you always have access to it in draft. You can run up to 3 of them. And it's usually one of the first items that I stick in my item deck when I'm playing draft, because health is one of the most cost-effective things you can buy in Artifact. Health is also great because keeping your heroes alive is great. Health typically ends up being more important than armor because there's a fair amount of piercing damage in the constructed meta. And then even in draft, because it's just simply more cost-effective, like you get more health per gold than you get armor per gold. It's very popular there as well. There's also a lot of health items, accessories in particular, that have really good passive effects or really good active abilities, as you'll see when we go through this list. So I think that also has a lot to do with the reason that accessories are heavily favored over armor items right now. So Traveler's Cloak for a basic item, easily one of the best basic items. You fill your draft deck with it, you don't feel bad about it. If you're playing Constructed, you probably don't play Traveler's Cloak, but you might play Revtel Signet Ring. So for 4 gold, so for 1 more gold, your equipped hero gets plus 4 health, but also has -3 bounty. Now, mouse over bounty here, it tells us bounty is the amount of gold awarded to the opponent when this unit dies. So typically when your hero dies, your opponent gets 5 gold. If they're wearing a Revtel Signet Ring, they get 2 gold. That is very, very useful. Revtel Signet Ring is great against decks that want to stack gold and that also try to kill your heroes in order to stack gold, specifically decks that run like Bounty Hunter. So Revtel Signet Ring is great against like the red-black hero killer deck. There's a blue-black control deck that tries to blow stuff up pretty frequently. It's also good on Ricks or any other hero that gets rapid deployment. So if you are playing a deck with Vesture of the Tyrant, Signet Ring can be useful there as well. But really with Ricks, I think if you run a deck that has Ricks, Revtel Signet Ring is mandatory. So very cost effective. Again, 4 gold for 4 health and then potential long-term gold denial to your opponent. Revtel Signet Ring is the sort of thing you definitely see in Constructed. You see it in draft. You don't feel bad about playing it. It's just a great item. Wristful Emblem. 4 gold. Equipped hero has plus 4 health and -2 armor. The unit blocking equipped hero has -2 armor. I have not seen this card played, not in draft, not in constructed. I've never put it in any of my decks. I wouldn't buy this from the secret shop. This card just doesn't feel good in the current meta. The plus 4 health is good, right? Health is good, but taking 2 extra damage from any source that does damage to you just to make it the unit blocking you, not even like all enemy neighbors, just the unit blocking you have -2 armor, and that might just end up being a creep or something. That is not great. Like, the risk and the reward are not in an equal amount of balance there whatsoever. I don't know what else to say about this other than it is not very good, at least right now. Maybe something will happen in the future that makes this worthwhile, but it's not very good. Stonehall Cloak, on the other hand, very good. So 5 gold for equipped hero has plus 4 health, but for that extra gold you're paying for this over, say, like Revtel Signet or even the Traveler's Cloak, you get the added benefit of it being a Stonehall item. So much like the other ones, it modifies the item at the end of combat every round, or every combat phase even. So you've got equipped hero has plus 2 health after the combat phase. 4 health is great, right? There's a reason that all of these 4 health items are important. They help negate piercing damage. They're very good at helping give your hero some extra buffer against cards like Zeus and his Thunder God's Wrath. Equipped hero has plus 2 health is very, very significant, because if you have not already watched my item review, I talk a lot about how with armor, my armor review. With armor, 2 armor is like a sweet spot because there are a lot of ways that your hero can take 2 damage in this game. Melee creeps deal 2 damage, conflagration deals 2 damage. Being able to negate 2 damage is important. So that's like your sweet spot with armor. This doesn't negate it from multiple sources, but it essentially is negating 2 damage a turn, right? So if your hero's in a lane that has like conflagration, that'll take 2 damage, but then as long as it survives, it's going to get that 2 health back at the end of combat because of Stonehall Cloak. So, you know, you get 4 health, and then 6, and then 8, and then 10, and then when your hero does eventually die and it comes back, it's going to come back with a monstrous amount of health, all while, like, slowly healing, or at least, like, pseudo-healing, while it's in the lane. This is just a very great investment for trying to keep a hero alive. Stonehall Cloak definitely sees play in Constructed, it definitely sees play in Draft. If you see this in the secret shop, a lot of times you don't feel bad about buying it there. It's just a quality item. Next up we have Assassin's Veil. This is 6 gold for equipped hero, has +4 health, so officially double a Traveler's Cloak for the same amount of health, but the benefit of this is the activation. Has a cooldown of 2, but the activation says choose a combat target for equipped hero. I have seen this played in Constructed, though not often. I've definitely seen this played in Draft, and I have certainly purchased this myself from the secret shop in certain situations. Choosing a combat target for the hero is important because, as you know, in Artifact, your attack directions are kind of assigned at random. You have a 50% chance of attacking what's directly in front of you, 25% chance of attacking your enemy neighbor to the right, and again, same percentage enemy neighbor to the left. So sometimes you want to attack a certain target and you just don't get the roll that you want. Assassin's Veil lets you correct that. One of the other things about Assassin's Veil is that, and it's something that I think sometimes players miss, if you have the lane across from your hero empty, but because of the random rolls during the deployment phase, etc., you're attacking an enemy neighbor to the right, you can use this activation to attack the tower still. You can choose to attack directly ahead of you, and if there's no target there, it'll attack the tower. So in aggressive decks, Assassin's Veil can actually help you force damage through and really puts that pressure, puts that clock on the enemy tower. It's very useful in that regard. Typically, when I do see this card in constructed item decks, it's in decks that run Bristleback. It's also a great way to like kind of ensure that Bristleback gets kills early so that he starts to snowball. Assassin's Veil, again, in aggressive decks is useful because you can target enemy heroes and or the tower as necessary. It's a good quality item. It doesn't see as much constructed play as some of the other items because I do think you have to kind of build around it with cards like Bristleback, but I've seen it in Draft a lot. I've bought it from the secret shop. It's a good quality item. Again, gives you health, has a good activation. That's going to be, again, kind of the MO of a lot of these accessory items. Phase Boots is in a very similar place. 6 gold, +4 health, but has a really good activation. Same cooldown time of 2. This one swaps equipped hero with another ally. Now it is worth noting, this will only let you swap with another ally in the same lane. This isn't like Blink Dagger that lets you hop lanes, but it does flat out swap positions. So this is great at either keeping your hero alive, right? If you've got a wounded hero, or maybe just a hero that isn't very strong, that is lined up against, you know, an axe or something menacing, a phantom assassin, you can use this to swap with a neighbor. You can swap with, you know, a creeper, an ally, way across the lane to keep your hero alive. Similarly, if you put this on your phantom assassin, on your bristleback, on your axe, or whatever the case may be, you can take those heroes and jump them in front of the enemy heroes that you want to kill. So this is both a potentially defensive item and an offensive item. Very much like Assassin's Veil, you can use this to set up favorable combat. In aggressive decks, you can use this to hop into an open lane if you want to pressure the tower, ensure that you're getting as much damage in as you can. Much like Assassin's Veil, when I do see Phase Boots played, it's either in decks with cards like Bristleback or Phantom Assassin, or it's in aggressive decks that want to get into the open positions, damage the tower. It does see play in constructed. Does see play in draft. I have certainly bought it from the secret item shop. Again, phase boots, pretty solid item. Fur-lined mantle. This is 7 gold for equipped hero, has plus 8 health. So it's essentially Traveler's Cloak on steroids. It's okay. I have purchased it before from the secret item shop if I really needed to keep a hero alive. I don't really see this played in constructed because it's just very vanilla. A lot of times you'd much rather play a cheaper item and guarantee that 4 health, or play a more expensive item that has just much better activation, much better stats. So because it's just health, it's one of those, like, if you need health and you have no other options, sure, you can purchase it, but I don't really play this in my constructed decks. I have purchased it from the secret item shop in a pinch. In draft, I might consider running it if I've got like no other good items worth running, but again, a lot of times you kind of fall into stuff like Assassin's Veil, Phase Boots, even Stonehull Cloaks, etc., etc., and they're just better items. Yeah. Next up, we have Book of the Dead. 10 gold. Equipped hero has plus 4 health. So more expensive, but less health than Fur-lined Mantle. You add a charge to Book of the Dead after an allied melee creep dies. And then this has an active with a 2-round cooldown of summon a zombie for each charge removed. And then you remove all charges. So one of the things I want to point out is the zombies are 2/2s. So that's what you're making. And specifically, the card says when a melee creep dies. So only this. And I think that's the biggest drawback here. If this was after an allied creep dies, or even just an ally dies, I think this card would be more playable. But right now, it's just not very good. 10 gold is a pretty big investment for only plus 4 health. So the active had better be really, really good. And this active, in my opinion, is worse than Assassin's Veil. This active is worse than Phase Boots. So the extra gold is not justified. You have to put this in a place where you have melee creeps, for 1. 2, your hero has to survive when the melee creeps die in order for you to get the charges. 3, if your melee creeps are dying, that's not great for you. You're trying to keep stuff alive and pressure the lane, pressure the tower. And then when you use the activation, you're getting just zombies back. Like, it's a really flavorful card. I like the idea of the card. It's just kind of not good enough. I don't really play this in constructed. I don't really play it in draft. I don't really buy this item from the secret shop. It's expensive for an underwhelming effect. It's even more underwhelming when you compare it to the next card we're going to see that also costs 10 gold, but is just significantly better. Klejurim, I slaughter this. Hourglass, I just call it Hourglass for short. This card is great. This card sees a lot of play in constructed. I definitely will try to play this in draft if it's available. I will definitely buy this item from the secret shop. 10 gold, equipped hero has plus 4 health, but the passive is where it's at. Whenever an opponent draws a card, give that card plus 1 lock if equipped hero is in any lane. So if you have an Hourglass on a hero, every time your opponent draws a card, it gets plus 1 lock. What does lock mean? Well, let's do the little mouse over here. Cards cannot be played as long as they are locked. Lock is applied for a duration in rounds. At the end of a round, all locked cards lose 1 lock. So, if you've got 1 Hourglass on the board, and your opponent draws their 2 cards for their turn, they can't play those 2 cards until the next turn. So you're essentially delaying everything that they draw by at least 1 turn when you have 1 Hourglass on the board. The thing about lock is lock stacks. So if you've got 2 Hourglasses on the board, now you're saying every time my opponent draws a card, they have to wait 2 turns to play them. That is insanely massive when you're trying to stall a game out. It's insanely annoying when you are playing against Hourglasses and you try to top deck something that you think is worthwhile. The Hourglass is just really, really effective at limiting the choices that your opponent has. It doesn't seem like it would be. It seems kind of ho-hum when you first glance at it, but in practice, is very, very powerful. You will see Hourglass in Constructed. You will see it in Draft. It is a fantastic card. Ring of Tarrasque, that's another one of those words. You know, I've been playing D&D for a long time, and I still don't know the right way to say that. I always say Tarrasque, but equipped hero has +4 health and +6 regeneration. 12 gold. 12 gold feels like a lot of investment for +4 health, but the regeneration is kind of where it's at. Regeneration is important because it heals the unit this amount during the combat phase. And what that means is that if the regeneration would be enough to keep your unit alive during combat, it will be. So during combat, this is like having an extra 6 health. If your unit has 1 health, but +6 regeneration, and it's being attacked by a unit that does 6 damage, your unit will survive combat. The problem, though, is that non-combat effects don't care about regeneration. Regeneration is only applied during combat. So Thunder God's Wrath, you know, pick-off effects, gank effects, duel, whatever the case may be, all of that stuff will bypass the regeneration part. So Ring of Tarrasque is one of those items that is really expensive, but it doesn't see a lot of play in Constructed because it's so expensive, and there are just other items that are more cost-effective. Like, this card costs twice as much as Assassin's Veil, twice as much as Phase Boots. I would much rather have those cards. This card is still 2 gold more expensive than the Hourglass. Hourglass is fantastic. This one is only situationally good. You might consider buying this from the secret shop. Again, if you just really need to keep a hero alive and it's the only health option available, then okay, sure. But probably not going to see this a lot in Constructed. I'm not even really a big fan of running it in Draft because, again, 12 gold is a massive amount of gold. I might consider running it in Draft if there's just like one hero I really wanted to keep alive, but yeah, it's not great in terms of cost versus effect. Next up, for 13 gold, we have Cloak of Endless Carnage. Equipped hero has +8 health, so that's a nice stat boost. And you draw a card for an allied neighbor if equipped hero dies. That's actually pretty decent. I have seen this purchased from the secret shop, and I have seen this ran in Draft. 8 health is probably enough to justify the 13 gold cost. The downside is that you're drawing a card when things that are next to the equipped hero dies. That means bad things are happening on your end of the board, but you are getting more resources as a result. So it's not like you purchase this and then hope your stuff dies, unless you really need to draw cards and you're trying to get out of a bind or something. But it is a nice, like, consolation prize, if you will. That being said, like, Furlined Mantle is 7 gold for 8 health. Cloak of Endless Carnage is 13 gold for 8 health with a conditional effect, and as such, if Furlined Mantle's not seeing Constructed play at almost half the cost, Cloak of Endless Carnage doesn't really see a lot of Constructed play. As I said, I've seen it in Draft. I might consider purchasing it from the secret shop if I really need health, but other than that, that's about it. Hero's Cape, just a massive 16 health for 15 gold. When you really want something to not die, you got Hero's Cape. This doesn't really see play in Constructed, but I have seen it purchased from the secret shop just to keep something alive. I probably wouldn't keep it in my Draft deck. 15 gold is a lot, and there's no guarantee unless you have drafted a bunch of gold generating effects you'll ever get that high. And if you do have a bunch of gold generating effects, you probably are wanting to draft just better items to spend the money on. I mean, 16 health is a lot of health, but again, the utility of stuff like Assassin's Veil or Phase Boots, in my opinion, just feels a whole lot better than the raw health that something like this provides. And then last up, we have Horn of the Alpha. This card is seen in Constructed very, very frequently. For many decks, it is their finisher. It is the way that they try to close out games. It is 25 gold. It is the most expensive accessory. Equipped hero has +4 health, but the lack of amazing health that the item generates is offset by the amazing, outstanding, fantastic active ability of Summon a Thunderhide Pack. Thunderhide Pack is a 14/14 creep that has Siege of 6, so even if it's blocked, still deals 6 damage to the tower. Otherwise, a 14/14 body is fantastic, and you get to do this once every 2 rounds, including the round you play the Horn of the Alpha. So, yeah, lots of decks revolve around generating a lot of gold, and then buying really expensive items like Vesture of the Tyrant, like Apotheosis Blade, and almost all of those decks run at least one Horn of the Alpha to serve as a finisher. It is really good. If you get this in draft, you probably run it, even with the 25 gold price tag, because if you manage to play it, you're probably just going to win the game. It's amazing. Turns out big creeps are great, and being able to repeatedly play big creeps is even greater. So, Horn of the Alpha, yes, you will see it in Constructed. You won't see it in draft a lot, just because it's both rare and 25 gold. That is one thing I want to point out. While I would consider playing this in draft, you don't high pick this in draft. As I was kind of saying with some of my other reviews, you don't prioritize taking a lot of items when you're drafting. You'd much rather draft heroes, and you'd much rather draft cards that you can play, because with items, you're not guaranteed you're going to have the gold to buy the items. And then even when you do have the gold in draft, there's not going to be a guarantee that it's in your shop and presented to you when you want to purchase it. So let's say you draft one Horn of the Alpha, you manage to get to 25 gold, your item deck might not show you Horn of the Alpha for the rest of the game. So while it's good, and I would consider playing it in draft if I got it, I don't think that you go out of your way to pick Horn of the Alpha, is what I'm trying to say here. Just because it's not going to be consistent enough in that regard. So anyway, Horn of the Alpha, that's all of the accessories. Hopefully this mini review helps you. As I said before at the start, accessories see a lot of play in Constructed because health is very cost effective, and in the lower end there's just some really good cards. Signet's cost effective, has a great passive. Stonehull Cloak, cost effective, great passive. Veil and Boots, really good active abilities, and Hourglass is super annoying, and Horn of the Alpha is a finisher. Accessories are kind of where it's at right now in terms of building your item deck in the Constructed meta. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, thanks for dealing with all of my ramblings. I'm recording a couple of these while getting over a cold, so my voice isn't great and my head's a little foggy, so I apologize, but I really appreciate it, and I hope to catch you next time.